Hello, everyone, and welcome to Littlefield live streaming. Tonight's show is Nerd Nite. Now, please welcome your host, Matt.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another virtual thing that you are attending, possibly with or without pants. My name is Matt Wasowski. It's nice to have a lot of you here in our virtual environment. I want to obviously give a giant shout out to the whole team at Littlefield. This is why we're here today. We're here to support them, our beloved venue that we have not been able to go to for a while, which has been very, very sad and upsetting. So thanks for logging in, everyone. Most importantly, a lot of the regulars, you certainly know this, but for the new folks, you might not. So you obviously see the tagline there, Nerd Nite, be there and be square. For those of you not in the know, since we started in 2003, we've had an alternate tagline, which is Nerd Nite. It's like the Discovery Channel of beer. You're home, you're drinking. Normally you're out at Nerd Nite at a fun, swell venue like Littlefield, and should be having some adult beverages to keep things fun and light. So I want to toast all of you. Hopefully you are all drinking something. Even though I obviously live in Brooklyn, my wife and I, we ditched out about 3 weeks ago, and we are riding it out currently in Norfolk, Virginia at my in-laws. It's nice that there are only 180 cases here, where there are obviously tens of thousands in New York, but it's also weird living at my in-laws for over a month, or approaching a month now. So, it's ups and it's downs. But the benefit is that probably my favorite brewery in the world is here by, it's called O'Connor. I'm drinking a delightful El Guapo. It's very tasty. So cheers, everyone. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why you're all here. So first, I just want to point out that obviously we're doing this virtually. A lot of you probably know that we don't do a lot of virtual stuff or anything on the internet. Nerd Nite is in 100 cities globally, but we only have just started in the last year, so actually recording them to the quality that they warrant to be on the internet. So if you ever do want to check out any recorded Nerd Nites, go to our YouTube page, just youtube.com/nerdnite. We've got probably about 40 up there now from Nerd Nite New York, Nerd Nite San Francisco, Austin, East Bay, Melbourne, London, Lawrence, Kansas, and a few others. They've all been edited nicely. They look great. So check those out now that you have plenty of time to be at home playing on YouTubes. So again, I want to give a big shout out to Littlefield. We're all here. We are donating our money to Littlefield. It has been the Nerd Nite New York home venue for, 7 years now. It's down the street for me. It's got all the fun shows. The staff, the ownership, everyone is delightful and trusted, wonderful people in the community. Venues are getting hit very hard right now, as we all know, because we are not at them. We're here in front of our laptops and our phones. So thank you for your donations. It's very, very appreciative. And hopefully we'll actually get to go to Littlefield and park life in its backyard sooner than later. We'll see. Maybe we'll have to wear masks. Maybe we'll just put holes in our masks so we can drink beer through straws. Okay, so for tonight, we've got 2 presentations. Normally we do 3, but we want to keep things moving along here in the virtual environment. So we actually, instead of having a New York presenter, we could take advantage of having this technology at our fingertips. So Josh is going to go first. Josh is coming from San Francisco. He's presenting at Nerd Nite San Francisco, Nerd Nite East Bay, Nerd Nite LA. He's a West Coast nerd. So we're going to bring him in today. He's going to talk about Infinity Law, the law of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And then last but not least, certainly our Emily and Megan, they've been hitting the scene a lot the last few weeks. I'll tell you more, a little bit about them in about 30 minutes, but they've had a very exciting and fun, exhilarating month. Before I get to Josh, I just want to do 3 trivia questions. Normally we do an entire hour of trivia, most often at Littlefield before Nerd Nite starts. Let's try to do some now. And also the disclaimer is that normally we give away literally hundreds of dollars of prizes for the trivia winning teams. For these trivia questions now, you are going to win absolutely nothing except for a toast from me and maybe a hearty sense of self-satisfaction. So hopefully that is enough of a prize for all of you. So question number 1, go ahead and throw it into the chat area, whether you're watching in Zoom or YouTube or on the YouTube channel. and we will find those answers and I will toast the winners. So question number one, these also should be sort of ungoogleable questions, I think. So I don't think you can cheat, but if you can, that would actually probably be pretty impressive. So let's try it right now. Here comes question number one. What movie poster is this? Go ahead and fire that answer into the chat area. I'm curious to see who gets that first. All right, so I'm gonna give you 5 more seconds and go on to question number 2, and then I'll announce the winners after Josh's presentation. So that's question number 1. Go ahead. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We've already got at least one right answer in through Zoom. See if anyone gets it through YouTube. Okay, and here is the answer to the question. It is, of course, Vertigo, everyone's favorite Alfred Hitchcock movie from 1961, set in Northern California, also in sort of Central Valley, where the mission is. Question number 2. Also ungoogleable, what countries or what's the capital of this country? Got to know what country it is first to know the capital. So go ahead, throw those answers into whether you're watching through Zoom or YouTube, and we'll get those coming. All right, we've got a correct answer through Zoom. Good job. Good. I gotta say, Aaron, you did not win this one. I'll explain that more in a second. All right, and the answer, of course, to this one is Madrid. That was Spain. And question number 3 coming right here. What did this sign say before 1949? So got to figure out what the sign is first, and then you got to tell me what the sign actually said. And Aaron, through Zoom, Aaron is the winner of that one. We'll give everyone else a couple more seconds to chime in. Aaron, you are very wise. Congratulations. And Jonathan, you got it correct as well. Nice work. Okay, so of course the answer to that one is did say Hollywood Land. Excuse me. Was part of the Hollywood Land housing development built in the in the late 1920s until the sign was destroyed by vandals in 1949. All right, so with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen. You are not here to see me. You are here to learn about our first presentation. Whoops, sorry, that button there. So Josh, go ahead and fire up all of your things. Fire up your webcam, fire up your screen share, fire up your microphone. So Josh joins us, like I said, from the West Coast, and he's presented a number of times in the California area. And what's kind of fun is that this is sort of a sister or brother presentation to another one that we've done in New York a couple of times, which is the laws of Star Wars. And so we've got it's nice to have the West Coast and East Coast lawyers coming together to talk about how our laws can apply to the different franchises that we've now grown to love throughout our lifetimes. So with that, Josh, I'm going to turn off my stuff. The floor is yours, and I'll join you for some Q&A in about 18 to 21 minutes.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm one of the founding attorneys of the Legal Geeks. I've been a California attorney since 2001, and I have many friends in New York, so it's nice to actually virtually visit with all of you in New York City and around the world, wherever you might be enjoying tonight. The Legal Geeks is a blog and podcast where we talk about geek issues in the law, because like many of you, I still believe in heroes. And we're going to talk about how the law would impact the stories that we love from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And let's just say there's a lot of legal issues with these stories. So first up, the Sokovia Accords that we're seeing in Captain America, Civil War, and then radiated throughout Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. raises a lot of complex constitutional issues. And I can easily say none of them are good and none of them should pass constitutional muster. Now, what are they? Well, first off, they built a giant submarine prison and they put people there without trials, without being able to talk to lawyers. And you have characters such as Hawkeye and Ant-Man that somehow are able to get plea deals. And there's a good question of whether or not those plea deals would even be valid, because were they even denied or given the basic right to counsel in order to have effective representation? And the answer is, I don't think they were. So right off the bat, we don't like prison ships. During the Revolutionary War, there were prison ships in Boston that killed 11,500 US service members in the days of the Revolutionary War. That was pretty much Exhibit A to the Bill of Rights in saying no cruel and unusual punishment. And while New York does technically have some prison ships with its prison system, that's a rarity. You know, this is one of those things that was just so horrible, we don't have it as a country. So putting people onto a giant submarine that submerges into the Atlantic where no one can find it and you can't be visited by anyone and you don't have a judge that hears your case is denying those who are in prison the right of habeas corpus, saying that if you're arrested, you have to appear before a judge. So that's one part of the Constitution. Another part that, let's not forget, is the Fourth Amendment protects people from arbitrary arrests. And simply rounding up people who are superheroes and throwing them into a giant submarine prison seems to violate the Fourth Amendment. Also, the Fifth Amendment. You cannot be denied life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And if you're just throwing people into prison who are accused of a crime, but they don't get a trial, well, there's no due process there. Sixth Amendment, right to counsel. We're kind of sensitive about that one. We have a long line of cases guaranteeing the right of counsel, and it just happens to be written into the Sixth Amendment to the US Constitution. So again, there aren't any defense attorneys floating in that prison waiting to see people. Eighth Amendment, again, no cruel and unusual punishment, and putting people into a giant submarine that submerges, pretty unusual and cruel. So let's talk about child endangerment. In Captain America Civil War, we do see Tony Stark, Iron Man, take on Spider-Man, Peter Parker, who's in high school and a minor, as his ward, and encourages Peter to go to Germany with Tony's Avengers to capture Captain America and the other Avengers who are not okay with the Sokovia Accords. There's a lot of problems with this. Now, you can have child endangerment when you knowingly act in a manner likely to be injurious to the physical, mental, or moral welfare of a child less than 17 years of old. Okay, Peter Parker is less than 17. And taking Peter to Germany without his aunt's permission to engage in physical combat, some red flags should be going off in the Stark legal department saying, Tony, this is probably a bad plan. Now, when you look at the Stark internship, that was arguably employing Peter to engage in superhero activities. Well, again, the test, if you're authorizing a child to engage in an occupation involving a substantial risk of danger to his or her life or health, you're dealing with child endangerment. So there are big issues right there of child endangerment, if not outright contributing to the delinquency of a minor by having Peter engage in activities where he could get hurt fighting the greatest soldier that ever lived. Well, could there be such a thing like a permission slip that Aunt May could have signed so she could have known about this in order for Peter to go outside of the country? Well, what would that permission slip look like? Well, putting my lawyer skills to work, I drafted that permission slip. And let's just say that it's kind of problematic because when you think about, does Aunt May fully understand that Peter's going off to capture Captain America, Falcon, Scarlet Witch, Hawkeye, and Ant-Man? That's dangerous. And what could happen to Peter if he got hurt? So we have to think about this. Peter could be getting into lots of trouble. Aunt May could probably say, I don't want Peter getting into mortal combat with other superheroes. And of course, there's no permission slip in taking a child outside of the country.
Hey, Josh, sorry, let me hop in for 1 second here. I was going to do this more tactfully, but you know, it's Nerd Nite, so we don't. We're actually seeing, we're still seeing the presenter view from your slide. So we're seeing your current slide and your preview slides. There you go. Look at that. Fantastic.
Switch.
Now and get out and stop bothering you.
Okay, cool. One button to click. So, all right. Thank you. Appreciate that. So you don't need to see the speaker notes. So there's the permission slip and how that would look a little weird. Well, let's bring up the next issue in Ant-Man, or excuse me, in the Marvel movies, and that's our Asgardians refugees after Thor Ragnarok. Now, for those who might not be familiar with this brilliant film, Asgard's destroyed. Hela is released after Odin's death. She slaughters the entire Asgardian army. Asgard's ultimately destroyed by Surtur. And then on their refugee ship, Thanos shows up and murders half of the survivors. So we're dealing with a tiny percentage of Asgardians that are left. Now, could they ask for refugee status on Earth? Well, luckily, since they look Norwegian, the answer is yes, if they come to the United States. But if they go to a sympathetic country like Norway that would follow international law, we can take a look at the test on whether or not they would qualify as a refugee. A refugee is a person who, owing to a well-founded fear of being persecuted or past persecution for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group or political opinion, is outside their country of nationality and is unable or unwilling to avail themselves to the protection of their nationality, they could qualify as a refugee. Well, Asgard's destroyed. They have no place to go. And one of the provisions under the treaty and US law is if there's an emergency situation, the president can declare that. And so being able to say, come with us because your country got overrun or blown up, like we're at the anniversary of the fall of Saigon, and think of everyone who tried to escape the communist North Vietnamese in boats crossing the Pacific to get to the United States. Or somebody who stole the Cessna and landed it on the USS Midway. Those are refugees that had no place to go. Asgard would fall under that same situation. So going to, say, Norway, which, it's Viking, that could work for the civilians. Things get a little bit more complicated when we think about Loki. No one would forget about the Battle of New York. Loki has a giant rap sheet of victims. He killed lots of people and then staged an invasion of the United States in New York, and no one would forget about that. So because of his atrocities against the United States and the world, he wouldn't qualify as a refugee because of his past conduct. So there's a problem there. And unfortunately, there's a problem for one of the heroes, Valkyrie. She spent centuries on Sakaar capturing people and selling them into slavery. It doesn't matter that it was legal on Sakaar. It's still selling people into slavery. That's one of those things that's a deal breaker if you want to be a refugee. You can't have a background like that. So despite the fact it was legal to sell people to fight to the death in gladiator games, doesn't matter. That would violate our laws and she would not qualify as a refugee. Well, let's talk about one of the most legally significant movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's Doctor Strange. Sure, he's an MD, but God bless him, contract law is the hero of that story. Dormammu, I've come here to bargain, was one of the best lines that I've heard in a Marvel movie, and I did cheer yes. Now, other lawyers might have cheered that as well because contract law was the key way that Strange saved the world. Let's break down what that contract was. Doctor Strange created a time loop. So trapping the villain from being able to invade Earth because he was just going over and over and over again in the same loop. In order to end the loop, Doctor Strange would want Earth to be protected, and Casalis, one of the lead bad guys trying to stage this invasion, would be taken back to the dark dimension. Interesting question. Does that make Casalis a third-party beneficiary to Doctor Strange's contract? And I think the answer to that is yes. When one person makes a promise to another for the benefit of a third person, the third person may maintain an action to enforce that promise. It's a very old legal doctrine, basically saying that if you owe person A $300 and person B also has loaned you $300, they can negotiate and go get that money from the other person. So it's a situation like that with Casalis wanted to go to the dark dimension. Doctor Strange gave him everything he wanted in this deal, but it highlights the importance of read the warning labels. Now, that's a separate legal issue, blogged about it on whether or not spells are adequately labeled, but it's very important with all things in life, read the warning label, even if it's at the end. Now, the other issue is, if you're going to sue somebody, you want to go after somebody with deep pockets. And Tony Stark in the Marvel Universe has deep pockets. In Avengers 2, Age of Ultron, Tony Stark and Bruce Banner decide to make Ultron to be a shield around the Earth to protect the world from alien invasion. And Stark actually says to Banner, "We're mad scientists, let's lean into it." Well, that is super problematic, because making an AI that can learn and become sentient and go on the warpath is arguably an ultra hazardous activity. And the way the law works is anyone who engages in an inherently dangerous activity, like blowing up tree stumps with dynamite, and the tree stump lands in somebody's car, you're liable for that because it's an ultra hazardous activity. Well, playing God to build super robots that can overwhelm the Earth and trying to create an extinction level event, more than a little ultra hazardous. And the people of Sokovia would have a great lawsuit against Tony Stark for making Ultron. Now, let's talk about Endgame with a little hint from Infinity War. In Endgame, we have Thor behead Thanos. Was that the right call? I mean, they had cut off Thanos's arm. They kind of had him subdued after Thanos had committed universal genocide, wiping out half of all life. Now, was Thor right to just kill him on the spot when Thanos was basically taunting? Interesting question there, because normally we want trials. We don't normally just kill people for the sake of killing them, but there are some exceptions to that. During World War II, Admiral Yamamoto engineered the attack on Pearl Harbor. We ordered his death. P-39 was able to shoot down a transport plane with him in it. His body was recovered with 250 caliber slugs through it. We wanted him dead because of Pearl Harbor. Osama bin Laden, same thing. Normally, we'd want a trial for somebody who's committed crimes of that magnitude, starting a war, killing Americans. But there are times in war when that gray area of authorizing force to take out someone in charge of a military operation would be valid. Now, if these individuals had just tried surrendering, we'd have a different issue with just shooting them and killing them on the spot. But normally a military commander is fair game. Well, with targeted killings, this is a complex issue. In order to have a justified targeted killing, the person who's to be killed has to, that death has to save the lives of others. It's to prevent great harm to others, and that capturing him or her will not have the same positive effect. Well, at the beginning of Endgame, Thanos is pretty messed up after using the Infinity Gauntlet twice. How much of a threat is he still? And I think the answer to that is he'd probably make more sense to take him as a prisoner. On the flip side, Thor is the ruler of Asgard. Asgardian law might have a different view on the fact that you didn't, the old mantra, if you're going to strike the king, kill him. Thanos didn't do that. Thanos killed a lot of Asgardians, murdered Loki, and killed Heimdall. So Thor probably didn't want to mess with that and thought, I'm going to end this now. The other half of that, and again, this goes against most of our views on due process, is Thor killing Thanos probably stopped other wars from happening, because the entire universe would want Thanos's head. How do you have a trial where everybody wants the same person and there aren't alliances in place? There isn't cooperation. Governments are devastated, and this is from the perspective that the universe has been defeated. Anyone who captured Thanos probably would have been a target by those wanting to prosecute Thanos themselves, if not kill them themselves. So in the margins, what Thor did probably caused less problems to happen later with Thanos being killed. And that's aside, it's still not a good thing to talk about, which raises the issue of how would we prosecute Thanos? Well, we've actually dealt with monsters before, and we do have a framework. Genocide is when somebody tries to kill an entire population. Destroying half of all life would qualify as genocide. When we were the victors in World War II, we spent a lot of time prior to the end of the war figuring out how are we going to prosecute the Nazis. So we had the London Charter, which was the framework for the Nuremberg trials. We had the Moscow Proclamation that put together this framework and this intent for the winning powers to be able to prosecute the Nazis. And the crimes that they looked at were crimes against peace, war crimes, crimes against humanity. And there were no defenses to these. We didn't want Germans standing up in a witness stand and saying, we did this to make the world a better place. We just wanted Germany to be great again. Well, that doesn't play well. And for us in World War II and looking at where we are now, trials are important. Trials are a way that we understand the facts. We don't give in to conspiracies, and we're able to find out what the truth is. And in the case of the Nazis, all of them that were prosecuted had IQs that were either above average or genius level. How do people of that intelligence do things so horrific as the final solution to wipe out people they deem to be undesirable? Well, one of the justices from the United States Supreme Court took leave from the court to be the chief prosecutor for the Nuremberg trials. His opening statement took 2 days, and I think everyone should read it. And I just pulled a couple sentences from it on why justice requires trials. And in it, civilization asks whether law is so laggard as to be utterly helpless to deal with crimes of this magnitude by criminals of this order of importance. It does not expect that you can make war impossible. It does expect that your judicial action will put the forces of international law, its precepts, its prohibitions, and most of all, its sanctions on the side of peace, so that men and women of goodwill in all countries may have leave to live by no man's leave under the law. We've prosecuted lots of people for war crimes over the last 75 years. Justice requires trials. Justice requires us to be able to understand what happened and why. So we don't just have kind of the Senator Robert Taft attitude of just take the Nazis behind the barn and shoot them. A trial was the way to solve what had happened, for the world to know what had happened. And when you are dealing with true supervillains, we've dealt with supervillains, trials are the way to that answer. So with that, any questions?
All right, so as always, I am going to kick off the questions first, but for everyone watching, if you're in Zoom or on YouTube, go ahead and throw those questions in and we'll get to those in a second. So I've got a couple of questions while we wait for those. So number one, so going back to the Sakar example of someone who sold slaves and therefore probably isn't welcome as an immigrant into a new land, does the level of infraction matter if someone was arrested once for selling weed or jaywalking? Could that person be considered an undesirable possible immigrant?
So the INS rules on that are, I don't think selling weed would kick somebody out of being a refugee. Heroin, things that are higher up, that would be different. I did a blog post after Avengers 2 because there's an issue with Scarlet Witch. I mean, technically, she joined Hydra for the sake of murdering Tony Stark. There's no way she could become a US citizen because of that. She would need a pardon in order to apply. That's a giant mulligan to say, like, you joined a terrorist organization in order to murder someone because you were mad. That's the issue there.
Understood. All right, I got another one. We want to know, so it's sort of like, it's like a three-part question here. So one,
Okay.
Targeted killings be lawfully carried out domestically? Can someone in the US have a legal targeted killing of someone in the US, or can someone in Iraq have a legally targeted killing of someone in Iraq?
So we don't have legally targeted killings in the United States because that's a fascist nightmare. We have due process of law here, and please do not do drone strikes on suspected crack houses. So we don't want the military conducting airstrikes. Now, the DOJ came up with a white paper that has a multi-factor test to kill an American who's joined Al-Qaeda. And there are very specific factors that must be met. And it's similar to the ones that I showed of, like, they can't be captured, that they're engaged in activities against the United States. So again, that's really specific. And keep in mind, that's just the DOJ white paper, because Bush did like 300 drone strikes in his term. Obama just in the first term did 3,000. So we killed lots of people with drone strikes, and I don't know what the total number is over his 8 years. That aside, like, we do have that framework because this is supposed to make us uncomfortable. Now, if somebody's taken up arms against the United States, in my opinion, I think that makes them a target because they've joined the other side and they want to hurt us. However, we have due process of law. We don't commit summary executions of people.
Okay, I'm debating if I should ask the next two parts or move on to the final question. So actually, yeah, okay, so this might be just a quick, okay, so I'll ask one of the next two parts. So has anyone, at least within our lifetimes that we're aware of, so this might mean like a non-CIA, non-FBI, non-spy person, has anyone ever been internationally killed in the US by someone, has anyone been targetedly killed inside the US by someone from outside of the US that we're aware of?
That's the stuff of spy stories. Like, did the KGB kill anyone in the United States during the Cold War? I don't know. And that's the sort of thing that we probably wouldn't want to broadcast. Now, during World War II, there was a plot where Germany actually had a U-boat deliver people to the East Coast that were supposed to commit acts of sabotage against the United States. Most of them were caught. So like they didn't get far, but like that's one case that I read. But that's the stuff of spies, and that would be fun to research and could be a wonderful story.
All right, maybe someone out there wants to do that. All right, last question. We want to know, wouldn't Thanos have been able to use sovereign immunity as a defense at trial?
No, I mean, that's like saying Germany got sovereign immunity for committing acts of genocide. While Goering, in his defense said something along the lines of, where I'm just a middleman, it comes down to following orders or whoever wrote the final solution. You boys were all on board. So no mercy for you, because they got more due process than anyone that died at Dachau. And in the Marvel universe, Thanos wipes out half of all life with a snap of his fingers, and literally there's no rhyme or reason to it. So then you throw in all the people he literally butchered. No sovereign immunity there.
Got it. All right, everyone. So give a big virtual round of applause to Josh. Thank you for coming to us at 4:30 in the afternoon on a Thursday on the lovely West Coast. Us jaded East Coasters, thank you for your kindness.
Pleasure as always.
Great. All right. So Emily, Megan, go ahead and fire up your stuff. So everyone, I want to introduce a couple of wonderful, delightful, intelligent humans who are wrapping up a big month in their lives. So as you can see on the screen right there, they are now in it's now been 4.5 weeks since they released their first book together, Scenic Science of the National Parks. As you can see, the gloriously subtitled An Explorer's Guide to Wildlife, Geology, and Botany. They had the book come out May 31st or March 31st or April 1st, one of those two. March 31st, I believe. Emily's nodding sort of in an affirmative manner. And what better time to have a book come out than the second week of an isolating pandemic, when you really get to do all the fun book tours, which is, half the fun of writing a book. So they've been intrepid online Zoom soldiers for the last month, Zooming all over the world to talk about the wonderful things of the national parks. And Emily, I will stop there, and I will not make the same joke about Cuyahoga Valley National Park because it doesn't even deserve to be mentioned anymore. So I'm gonna turn off my stuff. Welcome to our two presenters. They will delight you. I hope you all love our national parks as much as I do, because you should. I'll be quiet now.
Well, thanks so much, Matt. That's a great introduction. Most of the things that he said were true, and so you always like to hear that in an intro. I feel like we are just about to do a 180 pivot from what came before. And I also want to introduce, along with me, my name is Emily Hoff, and my co-author is here with me, and I'll let her say hi and say a few words.
Hello, my name is Megan. Keller is my last name, and I'm in Minneapolis. Emily is in Brooklyn, and we couldn't be happier to be here. And I hope everyone is all strapped in for this major turnaround, because we are talking about some entirely different topics, and I guess that's the spirit of Nerd Nite. So does my screen look okay? Emmy, can you give me a nod?
Your screen looks great.
It looks really good, I think.
Like really good. And that's Badlands National Park, which is sort of an apt pivot. Badlands is sort of the inception of our book, but I guess I should back up and talk about
yes.
Yeah, the background.
What's our book about?
Yeah, thanks. We should probably talk about that. I mean me. Okay, so Megan and I just wrote an amazing book called Scenic Science of the National Parks. It is a fun, accessible guide to rocks, plants, animals, the night sky, and bodies of water in 60 national parks, mostly all around the country, but there are a few all around the world. And it is all designed to be things that are easily accessible. You can find them in the main developed areas of the parks. And we have some really delightful illustrations, as you can see by this beautiful cover. Penguin Random House 10-speed press was our team, and they are known for doing beautiful things, and they actually really outdid themselves here. So shout out to everyone who worked on this book. So Megan and I are here to talk a little bit about how this book came together, because this was a 5-year-long project, and it looks pretty different now than I think how we might have envisioned it. How we might have envisioned it in the beginning. So next slide, Megan, because my goodness, our journey to this book actually starts with these two amazing shots of the early 2000s. Megan and I went to undergrad together. We were both theater majors. She was on the technical side. I was on the performance side and the theater, as you might say. Yeah, we said that. Okay, great. We did it. We really did. We bonded over being enormous fucking nerds, playing Sorry, staying up all night writing elaborate study guides, and also watching nature documentaries by none other than David Attenborough. When we left undergrad, our career paths took us to pretty physically different locations. Megan was in Texas for a while and now up in Minneapolis. I did grad school and then got a job in New York. And so I've been out here for, oh my God, a really long time at this point. But we knew when we left undergrad that we wanted to work together, and we wanted to find some sort of creative project to do together that would bring our shared sense of curiosity and perhaps our love of nature documentaries to the public. So all that is a long-winded way of saying 7 years later, I was doing some research for a different project at the Brooklyn Public Library. I realized you could write a book about anything, and then I realized I wanted to write a book with Megan about something, and I ran outside and said exactly that to her, and she said, I'm on board. And from there, our project grew and evolved.
Yeah. So we are process people, and it all really moved. As far as us agreeing to write a book, that was not really a question for me. And we knew that we could do it. We set our minds to things and just kind of actually get them done. And so, yeah, basically we, it's gonna, I was just told I need to unshare my screen, but the slideshow is going to continue. So, sorry, I guess. Basically, we are process people. And so we had a lot of meetings about what that would look like. And, we came across the idea about travel, and, you can travel for any number of reasons. You can travel for food, you can travel for music, you can travel for drugs or sex, and any number of things. And in our process, we decided to talk about the idea of traveling in the name of science. And so, like I said, we had tons and tons of meetings, endless process, endless brainstorming. And after we landed on the idea of traveling in the name of science, it was really, like we mentioned about David Attenborough, what if we put David Attenborough in the back of the car and went to national parks and explored the different unseen stories or seen stories behind the scenes of these parks? What if we acted like he was in the back of the car with us and really explored with his narration and our own narration in mind? And so this was back, as you can see, way back in 2015 when all of these meetings were going on and the brainstorming and ideating. And that was around the same time that we met our agent, who really helped us work through what our ideas would look like, and how our ideas could become more than just ideas and actual products. And so it really turned into her saying, I love the fact that you're women. I love your personalities. I love the angle of science in national parks, but I need you to actually go and do something, because at this point it was all ideas. And so that's what we decided to do. So in 2016, we went on our first, what we called a prototype trip to the Badlands.
Yeah, and this is, we mounted a GoPro on the dashboard of Megan's adorable little car and drove ourselves out to South Dakota in the name of doing this prototype. we had contacted a few authors of books about the Badlands, one of which, Dennis Terry, a geologist at Temple University, responded like instantly to our email and said, I would love to talk to you about the Badlands anytime. And he put us in touch with the park paleontologist, a fabulous woman named Rachel Benton, who agreed to meet with us in her office in the park and just talk to us about what it was like to be the paleontologist of the Badlands. And I'd say like 45 minutes into that meeting, both Megan and I were like, okay, we should probably try to wrap it up. We're not trying to take a ton of this woman's time. And she was suddenly like, okay, well, do you want to drive up the road and do a bit of hiking? It's like, yes, we do. We do. And so she helped us learn to look for fossils. We also attended a star party and met an amazing guy named Chuck, who is still the astronomer of our hearts and our dreams. He continued to star party with us, taught us lots of things. And we got back from that trip and started writing a sample chapter. We started writing about our experiences, right? Because I think if there's one thing that this whole process has is the fact that we knew we just needed to produce content. We weren't quite sure what it would turn out to be or what that content really needed to look like, but it was more important to get something down on the page and kind of start shaping a vision. So you can see we started to play around with how we could convey some of our ideas visually rather than just relying on the written word. And so we, then we got a little crazy, right? We learned that there would be a total solar eclipse in Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming in August of 2017. And that seemed like probably among the most perfect places that we could try out our idea of being science tourists. So in 2017, we went on a trip that involved visiting 4 national parks, including seeing the eclipse in Grand Teton, and also 1 national monument, Craters of the Moon in Idaho, and an international park, Waterton Lakes in Canada. And we have a little bit of fun video from just that sort of experience.
Yeah, and there is no audio here, but the point of this is to actually, this is footage in Grand Teton of the eclipse as a totality was happening. And if you haven't experienced totality, we would endlessly recommend it. Travel if you can, do whatever you need to do. But that is, what happens. The sky turns into like 360 twilight. You can see planets, you can see stars, the air changes, the wildlife changes, and it's really, really cool. And it was a wonderful and amazing reason to head to a national park to experience that in a national park among not too many people. It was really, really special. And that was kind of the start of our 2017 journey. And, after we finished that, that big trip, we basically continued to put our sample chapter together, because the goal of everything was put a sample chapter together, put the content together and make it compelling. And at this point, we still really wanted to write a narrative book about our experiences, but we really also realized that we wanted people to be able to follow in our footsteps. And so over periods of time, we had to talk to our agent, and we had this really excited email from our agent as we were having a meeting when we were doing some of our writing. It was like, I don't know, 9 o'clock at night. It was something so crazy. And we got this email from our agent that said, hey, there's this editor from 10 Speed Press. I pitched your book and she wants to hop on the phone. And we were just like, wow, that's really exciting. And so we had seen some kind of sample material that our agent had shared with us from Caitlin, who would be our editor. And then we had a conversation, and then ultimately Emmy and I had a conversation around what kind of book we would write and what we wanted our future to look like. And if we wanted to do, we were at a bar, I guess I could be honest, we were at a bar and I was visiting Emmy, and this was before the phone call. And I said, I'm really excited about this. This is a good opportunity. And Emmy, what did you say?
It had been made clear by our agent that this editor really wanted a guidebook, not necessarily a narrative nonfiction book. And so I said to Megan, well, it sounds like a fantastic opportunity. Like, we should definitely take the phone call, but I don't think this is the book that we're going to write.
Yeah. And so then I said, well, what are your goals? Like, what do you want us to work on as our lives continue in like the next 5 years?
I said, I want to share the idea of being science tourists with people to the broader world.
Yeah. And so, it was basically an easy pitch for me to say that writing the guide to science in the national parks might be a good start in terms of credit to be able to then become experts in science tourism. So ultimately we were asked to put a mini proposal together, which I have some screenshots of here, which
PDF screenshots.
PDF screenshots, excellent transitions and animations in this deck. You're welcome. That's why we did not design the book ultimately. But if you do see the book, which I have it right here, I know my screen is small and that's okay, but I have it here. The book looks much different than this. So this was very much an early idea of what a guidebook would look like. Emmy, thoughts?
Yeah, so we proposed then writing an in-depth guide to 20 national parks. And on the phone call with our editor, we said, okay, well, we would like to do 20 parks, a wide sample of geography and of subject matter. And she said, why just 20? So rather than telling you that, we can just show you. Okay, so here's the deal.
Here we go.
Here we go.
We're rolling.
Hey guys, I'm Emily.
I'm Megan.
We're here on the shores of Coulter Bay in Grand Teton National Park. Ooh, very nice.
We are on the road to Shenandoah.
We're in Crater Lake National Park.
You should get that seagull in there. It's me, Megan. I'm on the scene at Acadia National Park.
We are in Glacier National Park.
We are at Craters of the Moon National Monument and Preserve in Idaho. Oh, it's us. We are in
Death Valley. No.
Joshua Tree.
Yes.
Okay, this verse is about my best friend, bad as she can be. The only one that's on her level happens to be me.
We are hanging out on top of a supervolcano that you know as Yellowstone National Park. We're doing research for our book. Why is your magnet like so weird? What's yours? It's Wyoming. It's Wednesday.
it's Montana. But it is Wednesday. Where are we?
Olympic National Park. We are on the Pacific Coast.
The Battle of Yorktown. Do you know what year it is?
1781. Monsieur Hamilton.
Monsieur Lafayette.
Command where you belong.
I say no sweat. We're finally on the field. We've had quite a run.
Immigrants, we get the job done.
Rhyolite, Nevada, just outside Death Valley National Park.
Great Basin National Park. Magic dreams come true.
Hello from Mount Rainier National Park. That was the most incredible thing I've ever experienced, I think.
Yeah, it was amazing. Certainly can use a photo to recreate that, or even a video, I don't think.
No.
Bye!
Bye!
So that's what happened. It was 4 months of travel in 2018. It was 17,500 miles. It was 20 parks. It was coast to coast. The book ended up including 60 parks, like we said. And so we weren't able to go to every park in the book, but we did do a substantial chunk in the short amount of time that we had from when we got the book deal to when we actually, I don't know, had to start writing, I guess. That was the next step.
Yeah, so I guess important to say that our editor is known for liking to work quickly. So we were under pretty tight deadlines, and we spent the next 6 months indoors. We got to spend 4 months like super outdoors, sleeping under the Milky Way, eating mac and cheese in hotel rooms, and then 6 months in front of our laptops where we banged away in a Google Doc of epic proportions titled, "Okay, so we're doing this," for any Hamilton fans out there.
Indeed.
And we, over that period of time, reached out to so many people in the parks. And just like in real life, when we had visited visitor centers and hiked with rangers and talked to people like that, we found that people were so kind and so generous with their time. And it also is important to say that, of course, Megan and I are both women, but our whole team was women, our agent and our editor. And we made it a point to reach out to women and other underrepresented scientific groups to see what their research was doing and to kind of feature their voices and their expertise in our book as well.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting that our designer and illustrator are also women.
Oh, right.
And it couldn't have been a more collaborative and more amazing process from initial idea on the steps of the Brooklyn Library and the phone in 2015 to what we ended up producing just a month ago, which was what came out. And we will show you what it looks like.
Glorious page spreads. You can see more on our website, scenicsciencebook.com. And you can purchase this bad boy wherever books are sold, especially right now is a great time to support your local indie bookstores. You can go to indiebound.org and put in your zip code, and they will filter you to an online service to get you books from your local bookstores. It's fabulous.
Yeah, and if you do have a favorite, I would encourage you to at least check online to see if they're doing online sales, even if they are closed, because more often than not, they are doing online fulfillment as a result of the current state of things. And so before you assume that they're not, I would check it out because they would love your support. And we would love your support. So if you do end up purchasing the book, please hit us up on Instagram at Scenic Science Book. And take a picture, tag yourself. We will reshare it. We love posting daily on Instagram. And that is the conclusion. Our next slide says author Q&A. So I think, Matt, that's you. I'm going to stop sharing now so you can see me largely.
You just grew twice the size. Your heart grew 3 sizes in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, so first important questions while we wait for questions to come in from the chat areas. Actually, I'll start with the comment first. Now that we're 6 or 7 weeks into the quarantine, watching the video of all of you watching the solar eclipse is freaking me out, not because it's an eclipse, but by how many people there are within ones of feet of each other. I literally actually had a physical, visceral sort of shriek and shudder watching that. So that's sort of...
That's what we hope to inspire with any of our appearances.
Fear.
Yeah.
I hope so. I mean, it seems like you have a lot in common with Dracula.
He's frozen for me.
He's frozen for me too.
Okay.
But you look great. That is a really nice blazer.
Oh my goodness, your blazer as well. So very good. We should mention these are custom blazers. The illustrations from our book.
So
I'll bet for
Matt.
There we go.
He's back.
Sorry, I had an unstable internet connection. I don't know if you heard my last question. I'll ask it again. Are you both more afraid or less afraid of supervolcanoes now that you've sat on one?
I wouldn't say I'm afraid of supervolcanoes.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
You
For
two are
any
so,
number of reasons, but at this point, like, bring on the supervolcano.
you're both so cavalier and cool. I'm so jealous and paranoid.
I mean, if that's how we're gonna go, that is how
sure.
we're gonna go.
Yeah.
How is it writing a book for all ages?
Emmy, go ahead.
So Megan's fielding this question to me because I work as a science communicator, which often people mistake for being a science educator, as in working with children. I think, of course, that science is wonderful and children should be taught science and be taught to love it. But I am always more invested and more interested in my peers, in millennials, and in what the older generations are also doing. We have an innate sense of curiosity as humans, and a whole lot of our world is all about not following that. And so it's great to find opportunities as adults to just get curious and go out and explore something just because, not because you're gonna get a PhD or change your whole life, just because you're gonna look at a juniper bush for an afternoon and it's gonna be really cool, and that is it.
Sometimes I just drank a cocktail last night made of juniper, so I'm right there with you. Same thing, exactly.
So I guess to answer your actual question, I don't focus on children, but the book is accessible for all, because of course children are also curious beings who can get invested in things. And the only thing that it required was our editor consistently deleting profanity out of the manuscript, which at later points I just put in to watch them delete. Yeah, that was it.
That's all right. I mean, children have to grow up somehow, so it might as well be from reading a curse words in a national parks book.
I mean, I live in New York. Like, if that profanity in this book is the first that those kids are hearing and the worst, my goodness.
Yeah. When driving around to, from, and amongst all the national parks, did you come up with any specific logistical tips that helped getting around to help you getting around during your research?
Ooh, that's good.
I think so. For me, so when we were doing the traveling, we did it 100% together. We didn't do any sort of like solo venturing to do research in a more I don't know, economical way. We did all of the research together. That was really intentional. And I think the biggest thing that actually Emmy is a lot stronger at than I am is being very patient. The national parks, certainly the highly visited national parks, are some of the most challenging places to drive through and navigate when they're very busy. And it can be a real test of your patience and your frustration tolerance. And so I think the biggest asset for us initially was being patient, especially when we knew we were either going a place where we hadn't been or a place that would have a lot of people, or both. And then I would say another thing is doing even a light amount of research beforehand. It's not that you need to, and certainly our book is not the research to do when you're planning the logistical aspects of your trip. That's not the point of the book. But, you know, visiting the park website, I would say, is a really great #1 place to check, even if you're just planning to drive through, because they will often say, like Arches, for example, will say peak time is between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. So if you come between that time, plan for an hour and 45-minute wait at the entrance. But if you come before that or after that, you'll really start to alleviate that pressure. And so most of the parks, certainly the heavily visited parks, have guidance around that, and have an atlas. I think those are my big tips, because very often you won't have cell phone service in the actual park boundaries.
Right. Great. Okay, so virtual round of applause, everyone, for Megan and Emily. I think that'd be great. All right, and everyone, and Josh, don't go anywhere. I just need everyone for like another 90 seconds. I want to end on a couple of very, very important things here. So first, while you are all continuing to social distance, I do want to remind you that here's something that you can do in your own spare time to possibly become a world record holder. And we'll get to the significance of this in a second. So set in July of last year, the Guinness Book of World Record was set for the longest tortilla throw. The only stipulation is that the tortilla must be a 10 to 12 inch tortilla, not a small 6-inch one. And the record at that time, set now about 11 months ago, was 54 feet and 5 inches. If any of you are sportsing people, you know that's just about 6 feet shorter than distance from pitcher's mound to home plate. And so when I first saw this record, it seemed to me like, oh, that doesn't seem like a very far distance to throw a tortilla. The other note is you have to throw it as like a Frisbee, not as you can't just wad it up and throw it. And so the important thing to note is that, yeah, that seemed achievable. I always like to give the Nerd Nite folks something to do to make them world record holders. So back in September at Littlefield, when we first talked about this, Gabe, whose voice you heard in the very beginning, he's part of the Littlefield staff. He and I thought it would be important that we try to solve this ourselves firsthand. So we did throw tortillas, and on our second, third, fourth, and fifth tries, we each threw over 100 feet, more than actually doubling the then record. So it was in fact very achievable. And so, but unfortunately, the only way you get formally recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records is if you tip them off, you're going to try this ahead of time and they have someone there to record it and or monitor it. So that's my long way of saying this is something you can all safely do outside at a social distance, because you should be able to all exceed 54 feet. So you might want to tip somebody from the Guinness book off and say, hey, we're going to try this. And then you can get your name into to Guinness. So go throw some tortillas. That's very important. And if any of you do want to present at an upcoming Nerd Night, whenever that will be, you know where to find me. Find me here at matt@nerdnite.com. So can our presenters turn their things back on for a second? Yeah, just thanks for joining us from the Central Time Zone, from the Pacific Time Zone, from the Eastern Time Zone, and most importantly, everyone, please come back to Littlefield as soon as you can when it reopens for shows. Thanos is terrible, and Gabe or Caitlin, you can hop in if you want here. I think Park Life is still doing takeout or delivery or curbside food stuff. So you can go to Park Life now. It's got an outside area. Go pick up some food and give them some money. Gabe, is that true? Did I slide everybody?
No, you are correct.
Great. I don't want to be a liar, at least intentionally. All right, so I think I'm out. Gabe, Caitlin, anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Nope, all good. Thank you.
Great. So thanks, everyone. Congratulations. I don't know. Go drink. Be safe. Bye.